on this topic, I essentially am a non-technical person who ended up almost by accident in a very technical industry. So I came out of university with a law degree thinking, I don't want to do this. I don't want to make people's lives even harder than they already are by charging them lots of money to try and fix a problem. But I do want to fix problems. And I agreed to go and take a temping job up in Radlett. Now I live in North London. And I thought, I don't want to go north. I want to go south. I want to go into the centre of London. I want to be a proper townie, right? And I took this job and I ended up temping for a company called One to One. I don't know if anyone's old enough. And it was a collaboration between Cable and Wireless and US West. And it was 6 months before the launch of the very first consumer mobile in the UK. Wow. So up to that point in 93, only business people had phones. The car phone warehouse, yes, they were big car phones. Yeah. And so I was involved in that first launch. I didn't know what to expect and what I was going to experience. The first thing that happened was that it became very clear on launch day that there were only 2 people in the organisation who knew that they were going to launch with free calls within the M25. Only 2 people in the organisation knew. So they took all the temps and said, quickly, get onto customer services, put on a headset and answer problems. Now, not only were you giving people the first ever consumer mobile in their pocket, right? This really was something that people weren't used to using. We understood landlines, and that was it. But also, it was free calls within the M25. So everyone went out and bought the thing. 8 people on customer services. The thing fell over. All the calls were rated incorrectly because the engineers up on the 4th floor didn't know that you had to be really careful about local area codes. And so it became known as not One to One, which was its launch name, but None to None. Right? And from then on, there was a sort of catalogue of events that are endemic of, I think, firstly, a very tech-driven industry. And I will say I was one of the few females up on that 4th floor trying to fix the problems, right? So it was a very tech-driven industry. But okay, so here we are, fast forward. I've got to be careful with my time because I do love a chat. So be careful with my time. So here we are. I guess what I thought would be useful for you today would be to give you some practical models and examples. Now, we've heard a lot about challenges in the industry and so on, and the things that we would like to do. So I've, I guess, made a career out of learning from all the things that go wrong and trying to help organisations, be they startups through to large companies, to counteract those issues, right? When I left T-Mobile, I was managing a very large product portfolio. I say T-Mobile because the company only recovered from that shocking none-to-none brand image when it was bought by Deutsche Telekom and had a brand name change. And finally, no one else could say, oh, Mercury none-to-none, right? So it was an interesting story and catalogue of disasters and good things as well, right? And so you see a lot of the people who came from those early days, and I know there's a lot of telecoms people here, right? Ex-telecoms, I've heard Vodafones and BTs and all sorts of people here, fantastic. But didn't we learn a lot from those early days of how things worked? So the 3 things that I wanted to focus on today, and really share learnings from my own experience, as you can see, are these 3 up here, okay? And you've heard quite a lot about people talking, even in the last session, about companies who are really good at innovating. And I want to think about companies that have products at all stages of the product life cycle, shall we say. And we'll talk about that in a bit. I want to be obsessive about user problems, right? So with my law degree, I was put on very early days on all the escalated complaints. Advertising standards, trading standards, we're going to sue your ass, all of this. And I was the one sort of soft soaping, but I was also the one going and thinking, well, hang on a minute, there's a problem here. We need to go and fix the problem. I'm not just going to start giving away goodwill credit. We've got to build a business here. What's the problem? And so it all came back to the user. okay, and understanding what problems we were creating for them. And then this culture of learning, and you spoke beautifully about some of those cultural elements that I spend a lot of my time in as well. So I've got 4 kind of main quotes, I guess. These are things I hear a lot. For example, even tomorrow I'm working with product people from industry. Okay, and some of them very technical industries. And I never hear anyone say, I don't have enough to do, unless they're freelancers. Sometimes I don't have enough to do, and I'm happy, and off I go and do my art, and I do lots of creative cooking, and I enjoy myself, and I enjoy the rest because I don't have formal holidays. But I never hear people in organisations say, I haven't got enough to do. Is that reasonable? Yeah. So to that point, what I like to do, and again, I am a product person. I'm a product person. I believe that really we ought to be delivering to customer needs in a profitable way. That's what product means. Okay. But isn't that everyone's job in the company? And as an earlier speaker said, which was fantastic, we're all becoming product managers. Okay, I used to teach, apparently, when I first started doing product, it was uncool in sort of the late 90s to be product. Now everyone's being rebranded as a product. What does it mean to be a product manager? So I like to use some of the traditional tools as well as tools I've created myself. When you look at the product life cycle, and this is my own sort of version of it, I add those things on the far left: proposition validation. Let's make sure we have a problem, a need, or a desire big enough to solve before we build a solution. Let's break moving into solution development as the first step, okay? And it's so easy to say, and so many organizations do it. As humans, we can't wait to solve problems. When someone brings you a problem and talks to you, you can't help yourself. You know, perhaps you should listen, but you don't. You think, I'm going to help them solve it. So we've got to break it. So that's one of the main reasons I've added those 2 bits at the beginning. And I as I say, I share this widely. But when you look at this, are you working in an organisation, hands up would be interesting, where there's a lot of innovation? So a lot of your products are at the early stage. So if you were to draw your picture, hands up, who's sort of in a lot of early stage products, right? And none others. Yeah. Some organizations find that they've got a massive bottleneck in solution design and development, and perhaps they've skipped that first step, or perhaps they've kind of launched it and gone, great, phew, thank God for that, over the fence into introduction. Yeah. And we're so excited about the next innovation that we're not nurturing and growing the things that are in introduction. Okay. And in introduction, have we got too much in the product? What are you doing in introduction? You're trying to solve all the problems on the most minimum version of the sellable product that you have. Yeah. You just sort of, I call it the hide under the duvet moment almost, right? Because you need to be fixing all those basic problems before you go and build all the rest of the things on. So by having this discipline, and knowing that you only start taking it to new markets and building new features in when you're in grow. You're comfortable, the basic thing works. That's when you do that. So I get companies and organizations to categorize and work out where we are and who in this room has a lot of, perhaps a lot of products in maturity. Perhaps you're an established company. Perhaps you've got a real spread. Who has a good spread across this? I bet Arm do, yeah? A wonderful spread. But is it too much? Is there too much immaturity? And the amount of organizations who say, oh, yeah, you know, we really need to kill some stuff. We really need to get rid of it. And so this is a wonderful tool, not only to understand where and actually inform your strategy and work out where you should be. This will feed your strategy. But also to make sure that all the disciplines in the organization understand. So I do this with product people for sure, marketing people, who's in sales or business development roles. Yeah, who would say they're in technical roles. And wouldn't it be fantastic to go into a meeting, to cut through all the crap and get to the point and say, we're talking about this product, it's in maturity. Yeah, if you as sales are coming to me and saying there's more to do to the product, fantastic, but let's move it back into grow. Now we're on the same page, right? So this is an extremely useful tool. So a product lifecycle based operating model is my first kind of major thing I want to say to you. It helps you to align and flushes out the contention. How interesting to find that technology think we're at a different stage to marketing, right? No, align. Get the same language going together. You can then agree what your ideal spread is across all of the things. Major point, what are we not doing? I mean, a joke from my old telecoms days is we used to say, yeah, but we don't do duvets. Okay, like literally, we're trying to do everything. What aren't you doing is strategically extremely important so that you can focus on doing the things you do really well. So there's no point doing a half-baked job, is there? And then the other thing that's works brilliantly on this model is you ring fence resources. So I see lots of forlorn product managers, and I've been there myself, having done the job and run the product teams myself. And what happens is they say, right, well, I'm up in front of the board tomorrow, and I've got to pitch a brand new idea. But in the same meeting, there's someone pitching to add a new feature onto an existing product. And their business case looks quite certain because we know what happens when we launch new features, more or less, onto existing successful products. How am I going to make my business case for this stand up? And the fact is, you're not. Because in an early stage idea, in an innovative idea, using new technologies, AI, whatever, it's difficult to say what the thing's going to look like. Your risk is high. So your confidence level is lower. It's inevitable. So ring fence the pots of money so one doesn't compete against the next. Okay, so that is just some examples of how you can get that attention in your organization and not fall against that. The other thing really interesting from this morning's conversation as well is matching skills to stages. If you are a big enough organization to be able to do it, I ask people, where are you the most comfortable? And I show them the stages and they tell me. Great. Yeah, put people in the right roles. And of course, development plans to move them around. So the next thing people say, we've spent a ton. We've spent a ton of cash. Where's the ROI? Can you find me? Can you find me? Find me the money now. I need to get it back. All the time. For me, the place to start is understanding the user needs and wants. Now, really an interesting conversation I had earlier, which was saying, well, I can't really go and understand and get customer feedback because I haven't got anything to show them yet. Okay, and I'm saying it's okay, you don't need to. What you need to do is make sure that the need you're addressing is big enough. Okay, and you don't need to know what the solution is. Again, break it. So, and this is one of the main reasons for failures. So I have these three kind of biggest risks. It's a shortcut. And again, from the frustration I've had in trying to help a lot of startups as well as established businesses with this thinking. But first of all, is there a big enough problem to solve or a desire or a need? That's fair enough. And is it your highest priority problem? If you go in and say to somebody, do you have a problem with this? They'll say, yes, I have a problem with that. That's not the way to start. The way to start is tell me what your biggest challenges are now, last week. Yeah, what are your biggest challenges? And you'll see that the thing that you think you're solving is actually number 4 on the list. And that means they're going to spend money fixing number 4. They're not going to spend money fixing, they're going to spend money fixing number 1. You're number 4. Yeah. So they might love what you've got. They might believe and actually feel that they have the problem, but they're not going to fix you until they fix 1 to 3. Does that make sense? So that's the point there. The second one, and someone said it earlier as well, are the existing solutions good enough? If there's something out there that already does the job, why the hell are you going to be any better or different? Okay. And I don't believe that money, another whole conversation, because we're cheaper, is a good answer. Okay. Will people take the action you need them to? Wow. So people talk about value proposition statements. And yes, I spend a lot of my time working with organizations and helping them to validate their value proposition statements. But what the value proposition statement often doesn't include is the actions that people need to take to actually enjoy your product and to get your solution or your service Okay? It doesn't involve the actions. Do they need to displace another supplier to bring you in? Do they need to integrate you into what's already a complicated mesh of solutions? Yeah, that the IT department's head's going to spin. No, not another one, right? What do they need to do? So they might, again, absolutely love what you've got. But if the actions to onboard and even to pay in the way that you need paying are too much for them, then it will fall flat. So it goes beyond. Okay, so those are my three biggest risks. I feel so strongly about this that I was lucky enough to get a publishing contract with Pearson, and the book's here. So it was at the beginning of lockdown. So I'm going to leave it just there, and whoever wants to come and grab it afterwards, I brought one with me, can have that with my pleasure. So published by Pearson, translated into Chinese and German. The German one is the thickest, very long words. The Chinese one, anyone Chinese here, is the most beautiful. It's stunning. You open it, it's like, wow, I don't understand it, but it's stunning. So what this book really says is, look, you only need a couple of weeks to go and test out those risks and to gather evidence for those risks. You don't need a solution. Okay, you need to test the needs first. Okay, and it talks about counteracting bias at every stage, and this fairy dust, which is discovering the things you didn't know. And when you go too closed early on, and you'll find the same thing in coaching, you'll miss out a load of things. So it's how to go and interview customers really well and get the insight. And that's another thing that I also do. If this doesn't feel like the right thing to do, I hear this a lot. This doesn't feel like the right thing to do. And through my career, I have always been the person, even when I started out as a temp, to say, there's something not right here, yeah? This isn't right, and why are we doing it that way? And to ask those questions that feel perhaps simple and perhaps awkward, but they are the greatest questions. So when you feel uncomfortable with something, you can go through this process, which I don't have time to teach you. I spend days teaching. I'm happy to come and work with you separately on. But you need to isolate the risk in a very engineering-y way, write your hypotheses, run experiments, get evidence, and make a decision. What a lot of people do is they go and get evidence, but they forget to make a decision. Yeah, we've done the research, chick, move on. Well, you didn't actually make a decision. You just said you'd done the research. So before you invest, we want to isolate and learn as quickly and cheaply as you can. My final point here is about the culture. I love what you said in the last presentation, and that was fundamental to a lot of things I'm talking about. So learning and adapting as a culture, learning from what mistakes you make. The final thing I get is decisions take too long. So part of that is about making decisions that you need to at that point in time to the level of confidence that you need. So if you're at the very early stage of an idea, at the beginning of that product life cycle, yeah, you can't be that confident. So how confident can we be? Is 10% okay? Whereas if you're just about to launch, the level of confidence you need to make the decision needs to be higher. Does that make sense? So I have this idea of confidence-based decision making. And I'm just going to summarize now because we're right on the mark. I'm going to give you the considerations that we've just I've just spoken about in a one-pager. So it's potentially a product lifecycle centered strategy and operating model, right? So I think those tools are really useful. This absolute obsession on continually validating user needs and testing. The understanding that when you're uncomfortable with something, it's because there's a risk there. And you don't have to feel like you can't speak up, as someone said earlier. No, you go and gather evidence to make the decision to the confidence level that you need at that time. Okay. And so never feel that it's personal. It's not you saying, no, I'm not comfortable. It's you actually offering a solution. Yeah, owning it and saying, I'm going to get the evidence to support what I'm saying. the ability to learn as an organisation and adapt based on evidence is massive. The courage to stop. Oh, I've stopped lots of things in the past. And a CEO massively thanked me and promoted me for doing so. He spent 10 million. I stopped him from spending any more. The thing didn't work. And he said to me, that's why I gave you the job of looking at it, because I knew you'd tell me the truth. So this truth telling is so important. And I think that's where I will stop. And I know that you're going into a quick panel. So thank you.